people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. It would appear that newly crowned WBO lightweight champion Terry Harper is set to make her first defense of her newly obtained title against Germany's own Natalie Zimmerman, Friday the 23rd of May. In what is being billed as a homecoming fight for the champion, it's going down in her native Doncaster. Terry became WBO champion in September of last year opposite the ring, then champion and then unbeaten Rhiannon Dixon. She fought an unbeaten fighter in her last fight. She's fighting an unbeaten fighter in her next fight. Opposite the ring, Natalie Zimmerman, who sports an unblemished record of 13 wins, no losses, no draws, with 3 knockouts. 42 years old. And so along with the edge in experience, Terry Harper being the vastly more experienced fighter of the two, she also has the edge in youth. She is several years younger than Natalie Zimmerman. 14 years younger. Natalie Zimmerman is 42, whereas Terry Harper is 28, sporting a professional record of 15 wins with 2 losses, 2 draws, 6 knockouts, having been knocked out 2 times in 20 professional bouts against vastly better fighters than the fighters that Natalie Zimmerman has fought so far. Then WBC champion Eva Wahlstrom, then WBA champion Hannah Rankin. More recently, then WBO champion Rhiannon Dixon, along with familiar faces like former champion Ivana Habazin, former champion Cecilia Brækhus, Sandy Ryan, Natasha Jonas. Terry has won some fights, she's lost some fights, all of which make her a vastly more experienced fighter than Natalie Zimmerman. Natalie, who seems to be on the same schedule as Terry. Terry last saw action in September, and so did Natalie. Opposite the ring, Katerina Dorokova, who she beat by way of a points decision over 10 rounds. Looking at her CV, you can see how she's managed to stay unbeaten. Many of these girls have upside-down records, some with losses in the double digits with more losses than victories. Natalie debuted as a professional in August of 2020 in the thick of the shutdown, the pandemic, and she's fought about 13 times since then, unbeaten. Though with context, a much safer choice for Terry Harper's next fight than a unification match with either Caroline Dubois or her matchroom stablemate Beatriz Ferreira. In fighting Natalie, that affords Terry more time with that newly obtained WBO title, more time as a champion at what is her 3rd weight. She held the WBC title at 130 pounds, the WBA title at 154, and currently she's got the WBO at 135, moving up and down in weight. And so if she's fighting Natalie Zimmerman, she's not fighting Caroline, she's not fighting Beatrice, she's not fighting Stephanie Hahn, this division's newly crowned WBA champion that became champion this past weekend. I think the other 2 champions at the weight, Caroline Dubois especially, were looking at Terry Harper as the low-hanging fruit. The easiest champion to beat, though perhaps not the easiest to get in the ring. Now, they might both go after Stephanie Hahn, who I think is a good fighter, and I picked her to win. I picked her to become a champion this weekend, but she's still a lot less experienced than they are comparatively. She doesn't have the same amateur background they do, or the same quality of competition. So where they couldn't get anywhere with Terry, they might try to get somewhere with Stephanie. If Terry's spoken for from now until May, there's no sense in chasing her until her fight is over, and that won't be for some months. Caroline Dubois is supposed to be boxing on the upcoming undercard of Jonas versus Price. So she's busy at the moment, but this is an area of opportunity for Beatriz Ferreira, that if you want to unify titles with somebody, Stephanie Hahn just just fought. She just became a champion. So now would be the ideal time to open up a dialogue with her.
Matchroom.
You start talking to her now, you can maybe set something up for the summer months. Make her an offer she can't refuse. I don't imagine she's making all that much fighting in her native El Paso, Texas. So it shouldn't be too costly, too expensive to put the fight together, but it will take some convincing. There is an expectation that at some point Matchroom should make a fight between Beatrice and Terry, because Matchroom promotes them both. You've got 2 of the 4 champions right there on your side of things. So even if Terry has momentarily found something else to do, after that, the pressure is on. The pressure is on Terry, and the pressure is on Matchroom.
Matchroom.
We'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches.
We're splitting hairs here. If they run it back right away, it would be legendary historic stuff, especially within the...
Do you know Benavidez didn't stay for the main event?
What? Why?
Okay, I tried to get Benavidez on the main stage. I went to him and I said, Benavidez, I'm on the main stage, and kind of like, let's push this main event because I know you wanna fight the winner. And I think it was his dad with him, and they're like, yeah. And then in my ear, they're like, Benavidez has got a plane to catch. I'm like, what? They said Benavidez has a plane to catch, and he can't wait for the main event. So he was not there. He did not see it.
Okay, that I can live with that.
I can't understand it. I can't wrap my mind around it. You flew halfway around the world, right? So that you wouldn't see the main event? Wasn't that the whole point in going? Do you guys know how long it takes to get to Saudi Arabia from the United States? It could be anywhere in between 12 to 15 hours. And remember that it's not like he had been already out there for a week or a couple of days or something like that. He flew out the night before the fight. So that the day of, which is what brought you to that region of the world in the first place, you could skip out on the main event. In a hurry. Like I've been saying, he ain't fighting the winner of that fight. How many more red flags do you guys need? How much more obvious does it need to be? You ask yourself, then why did he go? Why bother? Appearance's sake. How would it have looked that you've been fighting in these world title eliminators to supposedly face the winner of that fight, but then you get invited to be there and you don't go? You don't come. What I'm fairly confident was an all-expenses-paid trip to be in attendance to see the rematch. He did not have to buy a ticket to get in. He was invited by Turkey, and I don't even think David had to pay for his airfare. But then why leave in such a hurry? If you were only really going to be there for a few hours, then why make the trip? Keeping up appearances. Appearances for appearance's sake. I have a theory. At some point after he touches down in Saudi, he realizes that after the fights on Saturday, Turkey's gonna want to talk shop. He's gonna want to open up a dialogue about David's next fight. And Turkey moves fast. We all know that by now. To get the wheels in motion for the next big fight, the next big event, it doesn't take very long. Did you hear what Ade said? That as he's gesturing to David to take the stage so they could talk about him facing the winner, they told Ade that David has a plane to catch. When did he book the flight? I guess he must have booked it on his way there, or shortly after he arrived. Think about it. He left for Saudi Arabia on Friday, he got there on Saturday, and on Saturday he has a plane to catch. When did he book the flight? It's important to note that when Jared Anderson, then unbeaten, was approached to take on the Bakoli fight, he was approached by Turkey. They didn't go through Top Rank. There was no middleman. They dealt with Jared personally. Now, Top Rank didn't stand in the way. They didn't hold up the process. If you want to fight on Turkey's show for the amount of money they're offering you, go ahead and take it. Because we ain't going to pay you that. I think that Turkey was of a similar mindset when it came to David Benavidez, who he so invited to be there for the fights, and David left in a hurry. He didn't stay long enough for those kinds of conversations to take place. Make it make sense. If you were only going to be in Saudi for a matter of hours, then why would you even go? If you were going to miss the main event. Unless, after you had already touched down, you realized that weekend, Turkey's going to want to talk business, and you don't want to stick around for that. After all the festivities are over, Turkey's going to want to talk to you about your next fight. And you're only really over there with your father, not your legal representation. I don't know that Samson Lukowicz accompanied them.
Obviously, we haven't worked yet, but right now we're basically in talks. But if it's good for the sport, it's good for me, and it's good for the whole division. So I mean, if there's an opportunity we can make a fight happen, I'd definitely have to go talk back to the PBC because they're the one in charge.
You see that? He's using sides of the street to skedaddle. He's leaving the entire decision-making process up to the PBC. But wasn't there a PBC fighter boxing on this same show?
But I feel like it shouldn't be no problem. Like I said, Al Heyman, he cares about me a lot and he wants the best for my career. So if he feels like this is the next step, we move as a collective. It wouldn't just be me signing with Turki Al-Sheikh. Me, Al Heyman, and all the PBC, where we would be coming together as well.
The reactions to all of this are pouring in. Friend to the channel, Quentin D. Lilly said ridiculous. Fly halfway across the world and can't wait an hour to see the fight that made you fly there in the first place. To which 90s boxing fan 210 Rod 1 said, so unless a fighter sits through a fight, he doesn't want it? Y'all are weird. No, what's weird is traveling for upwards of 12 to 15 hours to be there for Better Be versus Bivol, then leaving before the main event. Weird. That's what's weird. Why would you even go if you knew you were gonna miss it? He didn't know. I don't think he did. Not when he first touched down in Saudi. It's when he realizes they're gonna want to talk shop afterwards that he decides he's gonna skedaddle. The conspiracy theorists are already hard at work trying to surmise a good reason for David to have left so abruptly after making the long trip. Antonio McMillan stated, this lets me know that the fight was fixed and it's some shit going on in Saudi. Oh, really? He was told or got wind that Bivol was winning it and knew it would be a trilogy. That's why in the interview the same day he said, if I work with Turk, PBC will be handling it. Yeah, I don't think this is a case of match fixing. It's not that match fixing doesn't happen, because it does, but in this situation, no, I just don't buy it. I don't buy that. I think what I've always thought. David has never had any intention of facing the winner of that fight. And you ask yourself, well then why has he been fighting in these world title eliminators? What the hell else was he gonna do? He can't make 168 anymore. There's your answer. Why has he been fighting in world title eliminators? Does he have a choice? Okay then, but why would he fly all the way out to Saudi just to end up missing the main event? I told you, because at some point after he got there, he realized Turkey's gonna want to talk shop. He's gonna want to do business, and you already came here knowing you're not fighting the winner of that fight. You already have your own plans. You were only out there for appearance's sake. The optics, you want to be seen. Maybe you do 1 or 2 interviews, but you were never committed to facing the winner of that fight, and that's why this whole time you've entertained a move to cruiserweight. Before this past weekend's fight, before his own fight with David Morrell, as far back as November of last year. And am I to believe that these are all just coincidences? When you connect the dots, it all starts to look a certain way now, doesn't it? He was never going to fight the winner of that fight, and he knew that when he arrived to Saudi. He was just there to make an appearance, nothing more. And that's why he's been holding out hope that Dimitri wins the rematch, that there would be a trilogy, because then he doesn't have to deal with the winner.
Well, hopefully, we might be looking at a future opponent, Callum Smith. We're both at 175. He just gave a great fight, and I think me and Callum Smith would be a great fight, so maybe we can make that happen in the future.
Oddly enough, in spite of how sheltered and protected David may seem to most, that is one fight I think Al might allow him to have. A fight with Callum Smith, a former super middleweight world champion just like David, and a guy who they might think is beatable enough, at least more beatable than Artur Beterbiev, more beatable than Dimitri Bivol, perhaps even more beatable than Zurdo Ramirez? In their mind, you understand. From their perspective and the way that they look at things and the way that they look at fighters, particularly Brits, they're gonna think that Callum is just another Euro bum. That's how their minds work. That's the only reason they let Wilder fight Tyson Fury. They thought he was just another Euro bum. Guy strung out on cocaine, suicidal. They didn't think he was the best in show at the time. They didn't think he was the best available option in terms of merit, scale, and size. The Joshua fight was bigger, and the Joshua fight paid better. Deontay Wilder himself admitted to that, yet they went with Fury. Why? Because he was safer. So when you think about that, and you look back over at this, Callum would seem safer. than Artur Beterbiev, who beat him, he would seem safer than Dmitry Bivol, and he might even seem safer than Zurdo Ramirez. Zurdo is the fight I think they're angling for. Zurdo has been the top priority, but even with him, you have to debut at a weight where you have no experience in, where he will be more experienced than you. You have to work with Golden Boy, as opposed to doing a one and done with Turkey like you've been doing with your other fighters, Frankie Sanchez, Rayo, Isaac Cruz this past weekend, Carlos Adames. Turkey did a one and done with those fighters. He could do one with David. Make a nice sized purse in the process, because by now we all know that Turkey is regularly paying these fighters above market value to participate in his shows, and Callum may seem beatable enough to David and David's father and Samson Lukowicz and Al Heyman that they might let him do it. They might let him go through with it. Go through with that fight. He's already been beaten by Canelo, who's older and smaller than you are. He's already been stopped at least once by Artur Beterbiev, and he was flustered by John Ryder some time ago. Looking at all of that, they might do it to get him out one more time before this year is out, to make some money at no expense to them. They don't have to put on a show. Orchestrate an event. You let David participate in one of Turkey's shows, and he makes whatever he makes. You get a piece of that action at no cost to you without having to put on a show. Isn't that what they've been doing with so many of their other fighters, outsourcing them to Matchroom, outsourcing them to Turkey, to ProBox? Would they be underestimating Callum Smith, though? I think they would, as so many American fighters often do when they're dealing with foreigners. Brits, especially, they still think it's the 80s or the 90s. The British boxing scene is a long way from domestic. It's come a long way over the years. Their amateur program, the amateurs and fighters that they've been producing, and the paid ranks, the fighters that we've seen. Whereas the lens that many Americans view these fighters in, they must still think it's the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s. Those days are over. Euro bums, you say. There are more Europeans medaling in the Olympics than there are Americans. And these divisions where David Benavidez now campaigns, they're not dominated by Americans. They're dominated by Brits and Europeans, just guys from all around the world. This antiquated sentiment, antiquated idea that America still runs boxing? Not at light heavyweight. Britain's got more of a stake in that division than America. You've got Anthony Yard, and you've got Joshua Buatsi, Lyndon Arthur, Callum Smith, Ben Whitaker, Willie Hutchinson, Zach Parker. They've got more going on in that division than America does. And if David and his team so decided to take on this fight with Callum Smith that we've been talking a lot about in the days that have followed this weekend's action, it would be from a sentiment that this guy's just another Euro bum, that he's beatable. So I wouldn't rule it out. The key for Callum to upset the apple cart for David is to keep the counters coming. There's a thin line between selling out and trading whenever he wants you to trade and using his aggression against him. Catch and counter, slip and counter. That's the ticket. It's a thin line, though. If you trade with him whenever he wants you to, you're fighting his fight. You're letting him draw you into a war, as opposed to catch and counter, slip and counter. He's gonna open up. You know he is. You just have to be ready. Know what shots to throw and when to throw them with authority. It's actually a good fight, and I wouldn't mind if it happened.